Hi, welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information show put together by the people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club, help from faculty and some of the very, very talented students here at Dearborn High. My name is Gary Gardner. Welcome to the program, and we are talking, it's Dearborn, we'll talk about Dearborn stuff, and we have someone from, strangely enough, the Dearborn City Council to talk about Dearborn stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Dave Bazzy, welcome to the program.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. I'm going to guess that maybe you sports fan, Red Wing fan maybe?
I'm a big hockey fan. Coached hockey for 20 years, been around hockey my whole life, skated outdoors, skated indoors, was around when the first built the Adre rink, skated outdoors at E-Course when they used to have fencing up there, set of glass. So, you know, good old time hockey.
Not the most wonderful hockey season, so we're going to skip past that.
Well, you know what? We had a wonderful run
during
a great period of time. You can't be great forever.
Right. So, Dave Bazzy, you're Dearborn. How long have you been living in Dearborn?
Well, I'll be 61 in 1 month, and I've been here since day one.
Okay.
So this is I was born here, raised here, went to Tenike School, then went to Stout, then went to Etzel Ford. It was a great product of the Dearborn schools. Spent a little time at Henry Ford Community College, graduated from U of M Dearborn, went on to get my master's at Wayne State. And during that time, I've always called Dearborn my home.
You work in Dearborn too?
I do. I started out, I worked for a while at, back then was Ford Steel, when I was going to school. And then prior to that, you know, I spent a little time working for the city. My first job ever, a real job ever, was as a bathhouse attendant. And by the way, I think actually my hourly wage as a bathhouse attendant is slightly better than my hourly wage as a city council person.
Yeah, people don't understand that the recompense for a city council person doesn't anywhere nearly make up to what you actually have to do.
No, and I will tell you that this is my third term. Not to skip ahead from things we were talking about, but this is my third term, and the time and the energy that we're spending each year seems to get greater, and the requirements of the council seem to get greater in terms of the community and what we're doing, because there just seems to be this greater discussion of where the community is going, where the business districts are going, where the residential areas are going, and making sure that we're having a direction where it's good for the community in the long run.
You mentioned this is your third term. What in the world possessed you to run for council? And, you know, I've made a few runs at things over time myself, so I think I've been possessed myself, but what possessed Dave Bazzy to run for council?
Well, you know, as I always said, politically I've always been involved. My mother ran for mayor was the first female to ever run for mayor, and it was 1970 or 60, I think 1970, during the 70 election, she ran against Orville Hubbard.
Yeah. And
I think I had politics in my blood. In fact, Orville had called my mother into his office and said to her, Beverly, why would you run against me? And she said, well, I don't think I can beat you, but if by chance you were to die and I was second, I might end up being mayor. And so she had thought that, so politics was always in our blood. As a family, I can remember screening signs and putting them out, and my father was one of the lead guys who started the Teamsters in the city back in the 60s. And so I was always around a political family. Elections were always on in my house. You know, you never missed a presidential election. You watched the entire thing. It was the one time you could stay up late as a kid and watch results come in. So I felt, as we came into 2009, when I ran for the first time, that my business background would be helpful in a very difficult, we were coming into one of the deepest recessions this area has hit probably since the Great Depression. Automotive was really down, and I thought I could be of help because I'd been through these cycles already in the steel business. And I think I have been. I think I've helped us to look at things in a different manner. And I think, as I was kidding with you offline, I came in with rose-colored glasses, thinking that you could treat government like business, and you know, you really can't. In business, you recognize something and you go ahead and you do it. But in government, you recognize something, you think it's right, you have to convince some other people it's right, you have to prove it's right, you have to show it's right, and then maybe after you do all that, you get to actually implement some of that.
And then someone else screws it up because they put the regulations on top of it and then mess up what your plan was in the first place.
Yeah, or it doesn't get implemented like you thought it should have.
That's right. So we talked about that. Again, people sometimes think that city council, pretty easy, show up for a couple hours a week, You're on TV and everybody's there and they talk to you and then it's not. But there's a lot more going on behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, well there's probably 50 emails a day that come across my city council email that have to be looked at or addressed, and for issues and prepping for, well, we're in budget season right now, and budgets are always difficult. So you're always prepping and looking and seeing, what fits, what doesn't fit, what departments are in need of sprucing up, which departments are running very, very well. And it's a finite part of the budget that you're dealing with. We'd all like to, we were talking last night about roads and doing more road work. Well, doing more road work requires significant dollars. And unfortunately, those dollars just aren't available. So there's a plan to do these roads, but you just can't get to them fast enough. And so, this year I think we're doing something like 5.9 miles of roads outside of the CSO project. And then we'll do another, I think, 4 miles or 5 miles of road that's full CSO project, where sewers come out, separation
Combined
comes out.
sewer
Overflow
thing.
Yeah,
Right?
mandated by a federal judge that all those sewers, that means that, which is a good thing, that, the old combined sewer systems means you just can't dump sewage into the rivers. So long term, it's great for the earth. Short term, it's a painful process for neighborhoods, and it's a painful process from a monetary standpoint for taxpayers.
Again, so the meeting that you go to, that people sometimes see or go to, that's just the little tip of the iceberg as far as all that you do.
Yeah.
There's committees, there's review, there's all this other stuff, but you keep on doing it.
First, look, I love the city. That's why I stayed here. My mother was here. She recently passed away a couple of years ago, but my family's been here. My kids are here, at least 2 or 3 of them. My grandson is here. 2 of my children have houses in the city. And for me, it's about making sure and thinking forward for what's going to be best for the community long term.
So you've seen Dearborn from your whole life, and you've seen some changes going on. Let's talk a little bit about some of the really neat things that are going on in Dearborn, like Michigan Avenue and all the development that Ford Land's putting in there. We've got train stations come in. Those don't just happen, though. There's plans, like going back to your council hat, that are weeks, months, more like years in the planning. Talk about that process.
Well, in all honesty, probably about 5 years ago, we started that discussion about redevelopment of West Dearborn. And because if you look at West Dearborn for me, in this area right here on Michigan Avenue, is kind of like your heart. And as much as, you care about your fingers and your feet and your extremities, I've never seen anyone live without a heart. And so the West Dearborn, that area right there, is kind of the heart of the city, and it was deteriorating badly. Our vacancy rate was very, very high, and not just the vacancy rate, but the upkeep of the buildings and the lack of a real plan that anyone had to go forward with that area. So we had lots of discussions. We had lots of discussions with the current group of people that were operating it, and there were discussions going on with Ford Land, and being engaged and being one of the biggest partners in the city from a landholder standpoint. And Ford Motor Company, as they always do in this community, stepped up and made a real decision to have a real impact on this community. And that Wagner Place is the impetus for multiple projects that are going to continue to come.
There's people from 41 cities besides Dearborn watching our show. Talk about what Wagner Place is and where it is.
So Wagner Place is the project that exists on Michigan Avenue, and it really starts at just outside of Oakwood Boulevard, just west of there, and it works its way all the way to Mason.
Okay, so for bigger, between Southfield and Telegraph.
Southfield and Telegraph, for those that are driving
Evergreen
through.
and Telegraph, between Outer Drive and Evergreen, so that's where that is.
Yeah, and what you'll see coming forward is we're going to do some redevelopment of Michigan Avenue with MDOT in this, what we call the West Dearborn downtown area, which is going to bring us all the way from just west of Military all the way to Oakwood. And you're going to see new streetscapes, and you're going to see new signage, and you're going to see new sidewalks come in, along with the monies that we put in with some dollars coming in from MDOT to really develop this area to be more walkable, more bikeable, more friendly for where people are going in this next phase of wanting to be around the community. And if we don't do that, then we lose that next generation. Everything you do is, for your kids and for your kids' kids, because you're here, and at some point in time you recognize that what you give back and what you leave is really the key of who you are. What you take with you is a waste. What you leave behind is your legacy.
That Wagner place, talk about it's going to have retail, it's going to have office and residential, the whole.
There's some that has opened up. So we've got a handful of businesses that have already signed leases. We have Ford working. We have a whole group of Ford workers that are working already there in their autonomous division. And a lot of that area is sitting upstairs in the Wagner place already at work. We have businesses that have opened up, like Orange Theory Fitness. We have a bunch of other businesses that are opening up there, some restaurants, some mixed-use development. And I think the community is going to be really excited about events that occur there in the evenings, in the back there. And we've got planned open space, which we never had a lot of in Dearborn. As you know, Dearborn is kind of a city that really could use.
We're a city divided, if you think about it. East Dearborn, big gap of where Southfield Freeway is, and then West Dearborn, but they're trying to come together.
Yeah, and we're doing that. I mean, you start with one, and for me, if we want to talk about East Dearborn, we can talk about that as well, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
But we finished this group up, and we really strengthened our heart. And so once the heart's strengthened, now we can work on all these other areas that are key to the livelihood of the city and the business owners, and as well as the residential.
And one thing too is that people like you yourself who've been in Dearborn forever. I moved here when I was in 9th grade, and I, strayed a little bit, but not for very long, but came back always because Dearborn is a great town.
Oh yeah.
In the middle of East and West Dearborn is the new administrative center. It replaced the city hall, which was falling apart.
Yeah.
What's it like be working out of there compared to the old city hall facility?
I think the facilities itself are better. I think the people that are working inside there, so let's get the people that work every day and the ability for people to come in and utilize it. It's a much easier facility to use. So as a person who's coming in and needs to talk to the clerk's office, or needs to talk to neighborhood services, or needs to talk to engineering or planning, they come in and it's right there. They see a person who's seated in the center. They get versus at the old city hall where it was like a wandering minstrel.
You could never find your way around there.
No, I mean, our head of the admin for the city council spent more time as a direction giver than as a worker for the city council, because you walk in, they would say, where's this, where do you pay? This is all centralized now. And I think the acoustics are better for the council office. I'm an advocate of that building. The cost structure is better for us long-term as a community. Architecturally, the old city hall had a lot of great things, but every time it rained more than 2.5 inches, it flooded.
Also, we've repurposed the old city hall building into the art space.
Yes.
What's that like over there?
They've done a nice job. I think that it's still up and coming, and it's got some growth. Everything has a little bit of growth pains, and I think that as people start to utilize that area and understand what's there and what's available to them, it even will help out a little bit more. But they've done a very nice job in there, and that brings us really to East Dearborn.
Well, we're going to come back and talk about East Dearborn right after we take a break here, get some words about Kiwanis from students here at Dearborn High. When we come back, we'll pick up our discussion with Councilperson Dave Bazzy about East Dearborn and the rest of the city.
Great.
Don't go away.
It's easy to get caught up in the details. The day-to-day grind, numb to the noise, going round and round and round. Deep down, there's something missing, a void inside, a hole to fill, a life lacking. Then, in a minute of clarity, it hits you. The aha moment. You're needed. Kids need you. Kids of all kinds. All these funny, rambunctious, sweet, attention-seeking, vulnerable bundles of energy. They need your love and support. Some have huge life hurdles. Poverty, disease, hunger. And they're reaching out for you. Around the corner, around the world. You are a Kiwanian at heart, a role model, a guide, a builder of dreams. Together, we are Kiwanis, passionate and strong, ready to move mountains or grains of sand. Imagine every child reaching their potential. The power to help is in you. It's not about us. It's about them. Do you hear the call? Kids need Kiwanis. Kiwanis needs you.
Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner. We're continuing our conversation with Dearborn City Councilman Dave Bazzy. And the sports team, we talked about this before the break, is important to Dave, but he also brought a football. Talk about this football with all the names on it and kind of an ancient thing.
Well, you know, growing up in Dearborn was great, and it continues to be great because we just have a ton of recreational activities for youth. We still do, and so as a child growing up, I played for the Dearborn Thunderbirds. As you remember, the Lions were in the West End, Mustangs were in the East End, Thunderbirds were in the center. And my father happened to be a coach, and one of the years he coached was 1969. He had taken a team that the year before was a JV team, and they only had won 2 games. And they weren't very good, and so I think that's the reason they gave him the team, because they weren't very good and no one really wanted them. And he really sat down with the kids early on and said, you can be as good as you want to be. And I think that he was one of my inspirations on coaching in life. And he took these kids, and I still think to this day, they're the only undefeated, unscored upon team in probably Little League history around here. So they went 8-0. They never gave up a point. And most of those kids, when my father passed away, I would say that half of those kids that played for him were at the funeral. 40 years later. So,
and 1969, the Dearborn Thunderbirds, and they did a heck of a job.
Yeah,
it's always good to have sports because I think sports for youth. I coach little girls softball, and it's great to see them get involved and be participant and make them into a team.
Yeah.
Like the council's a team.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. Well, teams are important, and understanding your role is important in the team as well. You know.
So, we talked West Dearborn. We kind of talked about the center area there, which is the Dearborn Administrative Center, but East Dearborn, what's going on over there?
So we're working with East Dearborn to do some facade developments. We're doing some lighting work along Schaefer to spruce up some lighting, yeah. And bring in some LED lighting and some things that are probably going to help the area. And we're working with the groups of people in the larger buildings to try to help them to reestablish where the city's going. I think, we did some things on Schaefer near the old City Hall with Georgetown Commons. That has worked out well. And we continue to try to work with each of the business owners in that area to try to help East Dearborn grow. I've never been a big fan of the caissons for the trees and the planting that they put in there all through the city. East Dearborn, I think some of them make sense. We've talked about trying to work with MDOT to maybe remove some of those in there so we could create more outdoor seating. I think outdoor seating in the summer is something people like to do. Summers are short in Michigan, and so when you get a chance for even a day like today where all of a sudden you pop out and it's 65 degrees unexpectedly.
What's up with that? Yeah,
yeah, the sun is out and people are saying, boy, I'd really like to just sit outside. Kind of like you see over by the Starbucks, yep. Where today they're by Jimmy John's and Starbucks, they're just packed outside there because people are craving this nice weather. And so when we can do that and we can take the shops that have restaurants and coffee shops and whatever and create more seating, we help the business owner. We help them with their clientele. We help them to be a more attractive place to be. And those caissons are disrupting that flow. And I've talked about it for 3 or 4 years. It is really important. And then commonality and storefront. If we can start to work on some commonality and some better storefront facades. I think that helps us, and we have to figure out as a community how to put those dollars in or get those people to spend those dollars and us to be able to help them as a community.
Then there's the other main road in Dearborn, I'll call it Warren Avenue,
Yeah.
which is a spectacular destination for food, for, it's people who like food should love that area.
Warren, they've done a fabulous job on Warren, and the Arab American community has been a key component to Dearborn and Dearborn's overall success in terms of getting businesses and sprucing them up, whether it's Dix Avenue and some of the great restaurants along Dix Avenue, and some of the old staples that have been there for a long time, like Roman Village, or whether we go up and down Warren Avenue and we look at all the wonderful bakeries and the restaurants that exist along there. I think they're are both good examples, and we're been able to get monies from certain areas. We've got monies going into Warren this year. We've got monies going into Dix this year to upgrade both of those areas. So, like I said, we started out with a heart, and now we're looking at every extremity and trying to make sure that we're doing everything that we can do to help those businesses succeed.
And the south end, like the Dix area, it used to be, when I first came to Dearborn, that was smoke coming out of the Rouge Steel and the factories down there, but that's all cleaned up, and Ford, as the principal sort of anchor for Dearborn, I can still say that, has done a fantastic job, not only with the air pollution reduction, but also the ecological things, the grass on top of the buildings and that kind of stuff. Talk about that.
Well, they've done not only that, but they've also given some money into the community area and plant trees and looked at things to help reduce, areas of health like asthma, and I think more of that needs to get done. Ford has become a zero pollution group in this new F-150 complex, and I think that's just a tremendous asset. And we have AK Steel down there, and steel mills notoriously used to be really dirty. But now we have a steel mill that doesn't really have coke ovens. They do have blast furnaces, and they do have basic oxygen furnaces. And there is going to be some level of pollution that's released in those areas, and we keep working hard to tamp that down and monitor that and keep it as reduced as possible, because everyone deserves to have a clean area to be in. But I worked there in 1976 and 1977 when you came out and you wrote your name in your car every day.
Right. It's different. And moving again with Ford back to the massive redevelopment of their engineering complex over back on the Rotunda, Outer Drive, that area. Did you see that come on council when they started talking about that, or did they just sort of come in one day and say, hey, we're going to put $1 billion into Dearborn?
Well, I knew that they wanted to bring their groups into we talk about moving forward here in this 21st century, and we talk about what workers are looking for from a workplace and how you attract the top talent and the best people, and putting them in buildings that were built prior to or around World War II isn't really in that nomenclature. And so they looked around, and I think they've always been committed here to this community and made a decision to put and spend real dollars creating a complex that would attract new businesses, make themselves available from a technology standpoint, on a working standpoint, to get to the next century going forward. And there are reasons that people always want to make businesses villains, but the reality is Ford has been a great corporate partner to this community way back. When my grandfather came here and settled here, he settled here because there were opportunities to work at Ford, all right? And many others came here for the same reason. And this community was an outreach of people and immigrants that came really because of the jobs that were available here.
And one of the things you say that Ford used to do, the old engineering building where they had the hull upside down from the Liberty ships, where they repurposed the hull structure to make the beams for the building. Is this, but that's not what they do in the 21st century now with all of the technology and those type of things.
No, I mean, we're going towards electric, we're going towards autonomous. It's a whole new world of what you're going to see. it's an exciting time to be in and around automotive and watch what's occurring. And people, some people hate change, some people love change, but change is inevitable. And I think what Ford is doing is preparing them for change.
Your position now, being on council for 9 years, and you've seen what's happened in Dearborn throughout your lifetime. What's Dave Bazzy's crystal ball say for the future of Dearborn? What do you see coming up?
Well, I like what we're doing. I think that we have to, as a council, and one of the reasons I stayed for one more term is for sure, and who knows what the next 4 after this will bring. But I think what happens is we really have to help and create a guidance pathway for our neighborhoods. We've got great parks, we've got great amenities. We're creating walking trails and better ways for people to move around the entire community outside of vehicles. And I think we need to continue to do that. But I also think that we can't ever neglect and forget what's going on in the neighborhoods. We have to be consistent. We understand there's a progression point where we're going to be building more houses and newer houses and bigger houses. People aren't interested in living in smaller bungalows like they used to. But it's important that that progression is one of a step and not a massive movement. So we have to make sure that we don't allow such severe outliers to come into neighborhoods and disrupt full neighborhoods, because in theory this may be where we're going to be 25 years from now. So I think I look at those neighborhoods and I say, hey, how do we make sure that we're doing what's right for both the current and the future neighborhoods? And that's probably the toughest area that I look in, because it's the unknown. Are you making the right decision? Are you doing the right things? Are you creating investment, or are you stymieing investment? And you've got to make sure it's a fine line between the two.
Down about our last minute or so. So, Dave Bazzy, being on the council, what's the best part about being on the council for City Council for Dearborn?
I think the best part is watching things that you plan to work on come to fruition. I couldn't be prouder of what's occurring here at the Wagner project and the amount of work that the council put in for this to occur. I couldn't be prouder of where we're at in recreation. We continue to be a leader in recreation across communities, and the amenities that we have here in our park system and what we have here. And we've created this new pool at Ford Woods, which is going to open up this year. And it's a great pool. It's a smaller version of Dunworth. We've put money into Dunworth. We've got real dollars going in to make it better. So I'm proud of seeing all those things come to fruition.
Sounds like you enjoy what you do, both at work, after work at the council, which is a lot of work, and all life. Dave Bazzy, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate having you. Thank you for tuning in to KiwaniTalk. Gary Gardner, see you next time. Bye-bye.